2025. Thank you very much, Jamie. Recording in progress. We're going to start with the April 24, 2025 meeting minutes, and all of the members are in person. So
Should we maybe, for purposes of the record, just go around and indicate who's here for
Absolutely.
members?
I apologize. Yep, we'll do member introductions. So first is Gretchen Young. I'm here from the city of Rochester, and I'm a voting member.
Suzanne Woodland on behalf of the city of Portsmouth, voting member.
Jake Roger, town of Epping, voting member.
And Tim,
Tim Pulse, City Dover,
voting member.
voting member.
Great. All right, now we will move on to approval of the 2024 members meeting, April 24, 2025 members meeting minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Jake or Tim, would you second?
Second.
All right, seconded by Tim. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, that's a unanimous. Approval of the August 7, 2025 executive, it's actually executive board meeting minutes.
So moved.
Need a second. Great. Moved in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that's unanimous. Thank you. Next, item number 3, we will move on. It's the intermunicipal agreement update. And for folks that were not in attendance at the executive board meeting, Suzanne Woodland mentioned that the intermunicipal agreement with all of the MAM members was always envisioned to be updated ahead of the next permit term, so February of 26. And where we have some potential Maine communities joining us, it really is a perfect time for us to revisit that. So I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I don't need to say a lot. We did cover a bit at the executive board meeting. But effectively, the agreement should be renewed or updated prior to February of 2026. And so I am working on some draft minor updates just to clean up the document and maybe streamline some of the processes a little bit now that we've kind of had a rhythm for the last couple years here. So you should see probably a draft circulated for the September meeting. So that will be, well in advance of, that February timeline to renew and update the intermunicipal agreement. As we also talked about, the Maine communities, if they would like to be part of MAM, all they need to do under the agreement is simply fill out the form that says they're electing to participate. And what we covered last time is that if that is the path that they so choose, they should think carefully about the formula for contribution that the MAM communities have been using successfully and unanimously. And if kind of have that conversation with the existing communities as part of MAM to see if we're all comfortable with how they perceive their contribution might fit in. And we did talk a lot actually about some of the data that the Maine communities might be able to bring to the table. Which is just exciting, I think, from a science perspective and really understanding the estuary even better. So definitely looking forward to that, but the beauty is it's a very easy process. And we're looking forward to seeing if there's a thing there. So with that, I would just say hopefully in September we'll have a draft that we could look at that would update all the communities.
That's perfect.
Is there an has EPA indicated that they're gonna include Maine communities in the?
So
permit?
it's, so EPA doesn't regulate Maine communities, DEP does. And DEP has issued 3 permits that I identically mimic, and they're working with North Berwick. However, North Berwick potentially doesn't discharge during the growing season. So, and that's, I don't know all the details on exactly how that's going, but yes, so it very much, it's almost identical. And then there's been a lot of, I don't know exactly, but I believe there's been a lot of encouragement of the Maine communities to join this municipal alliance. So I think that kind of says that some of the work that we're doing is on track with what they're looking for. And so that'll fall to you guys, because
Yeah,
then
we've already included them. Already.
that's awesome. Done and done. That's perfect. And that's why we'll get to that, but this is the UNH team who have been doing the PTAP for all these years. And one of the real beauties of PTAP is that it is so easy to reach out with what we need, and you can just add the stuff that we need. So perfect. All right, I'll move on. Any other questions on that?
Is it only the ones that discharge to Great Bay? So I was wondering why.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yep, the estuary.
Okay. All right, then I'm gonna move on to item number 4. I will note that Steve Cronin was able to join us remotely, and you're a voting member. I don't anticipate any more votes today, but it's still, we have an additional member.
Also see John Story there, I don't.
Yeah, John, you've relinquished your vote, but I'm glad to see you here.
Oh, okay. Okay, good enough.
Tim's vote.
Thank you.
All right, so moving on to the joint adaptive management plan review. Just a reminder for our submission deadlines, we've agreed, it's been sort of an organic process, work with through our settlement agreement, working with EPA and CLF and folks, that the end of September really makes sense for us to do our annual submissions, although it's not actually required under the permit. We have agreed to do that. And that aligns with the submission timelines for MS4 annual report. So it kind of has us thinking about the same topics at the same time of year. We also have agreed to or committed to sending out our individual communities project updates 2 weeks prior to voting to submit the annual report. So that said, we'll go through everything today, but there will be a revised adaptive management plan circulated ahead of another meeting in September. We will have to hold another meeting in September to formally approve the submission of the adaptive management plan and allow for discussion of any items of the plan, but specifically the project updates. So I'm gonna open up the plan that we submitted last year. There are not going to be, well, I don't anticipate there being huge changes, but I'll walk through everything and allow the different project partners to give us updates, and we can open it up to questions. So before I dive in, any kind of broad questions about that? Okay. Then I'm going to attempt to share my, oh, I'm gonna request the ability to share. Okay, now I'm gonna try and share my screen. Here we go. And share. And I actually may have done this too quickly. Hold on, stop sharing for a second. I'm gonna move this up here. There we go. And now I'm gonna share this screen. Okay, and if someone remotely could just confirm, are you seeing the document?
Looks good.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Thank you, Jamie. Okay, so going up to the top here. I apologize, but we're almost there. Okay, so this is just the adaptive management plan from last year. This will be set up the same way. I can talk to Steve. We can talk offline if Exeter is going to be submitting as part of the joint report, or if there's going to be a separate report. But you're welcome to be included in the joint report. But nothing hugely substantive. The layout, table of contents is all going to stay the same. appendices are gonna stay the same. And I just want folks who, maybe listening or half listening, the biggest piece that we're gonna have to focus on individually are these source reduction plans for each individual community. And we'll get to that as it comes up, but individual communities are gonna need to do those and submit them to me for inclusion in the overall plan, the joint plan. Okay, so this is an adaptive management plan update, and I'll take care of doing this after I get everyone's reports that we're gonna go over today. But we typically talk about, how much point source nitrogen reduction that has been done through the municipal alliance communities. And just talk about some of the funding that we've been doing and just kind of an update, general update on the work that we've been doing. So I'll take care of updating that once I receive all the information. The monitoring and water quality in the Great Bay. So I'm gonna turn this one over to, is it Chris? Are you gonna take this one today, or is it Kala? Okay, Kala Matzo from CREP is going to talk through the different projects that they've been working on. This is typically what we do. We talk about all of our data collection, and we'll update this. I don't think there's been huge changes, but if you want to share just updates on the projects that you've been working on.
Sure. If you follow along there, underneath summary of plan and then data collection, yeah, right there. The first part deals with nutrient loading. So we are continuing to do that, and that is on track. That is done through the University of New Hampshire. And it's quite a lot of work. So the way it's currently done is that we report out the results of this every 5 years, oftentimes associated with our State of our Estuary event. But recently, we used to report out in 3-year averages. You would wait 5 years and then you would get these sort of multiple year averages. You've now switched to annual. So the next time you're going to see this, it's probably going to be mid 2027. Next State of the Estuaries year is 2028. What you're going to get is a report on the annual loading from 2020 through 2025. The last State of the Estuaries, or actually 2021 through 2025. The last State of the Estuaries stopped at 2020. All that is proceeding on track. The next thing you see here, and if you have questions, just interrupt me or ask me at the end. The next thing you see there is eelgrass. All of that is also proceeding. We have a number of different monitoring programs, some to look at where is the seagrass, and others to look at, okay, how healthy is the seagrass? And it's not just the seagrass, it's, well, how much invasive seaweed is there? How much plankton is there? What is the organic content in the sediments? Because that tells you a lot about the health of your system. So all that is associated in those data, and those are proceeding on schedule. River discharge is also happening at 8 stations monthly between March and December. And recently, as part of a separate project, the MAM supported that we look at how to maybe get better estimates of surface flow from tributaries that don't have USGS gauges on them right now. And we hope to report back to you on that in a couple of months. What else do we have there, Gretchen? Yeah, seaweed, I already mentioned. That's a bit of a rabbit hole that we could go down. But we have been really trying to do a better job of understanding seaweed, because oftentimes when people think of a system getting too much nutrients, they think, oh, plankton blooms, right? But oftentimes it's not plankton blooms, it's seaweed blooms. And that really depends on your hydrodynamics, which one of those two you're going to see. People were starting to think, oh man, we really got a seaweed problem. I think most of us now look at that story and say it's not as clear as that. We don't definitely have a seaweed problem. In fact, we could have such a bad light problem that not even the seaweed can grow over the last 2 or 3 years. And what causes the problem with light? Well, we can get into that. So all of that is proceeding. Special studies and data analysis. We have been working a lot with both Clifton and Stacy from Brown and Caldwell, as well as 3 or 4 external advisors from different places up and down the US coast, as well as some folks from Prince Edward Island. And we've made a lot of progress there, and I think that some of the people in this community, like Gretchen and John Storer and others, were really involved in our eelgrass resilience project and saw a lot of the deep thinking that we tried to do to understand what is stressing seagrass. And I have put, I can put a link in the chat or send an email to Gretchen afterwards, where you can get a really nice, what's called a executive summary of our "So What" report, which really kind of breaks it down. If you don't have a whole lot of time, it's 2 pages with really basic questions like, hey, we've reduced nitrogen by a lot, but seagrass is still doing really poorly. What's up? And we go through and try to give you our best answers to those questions. So stakeholder engagement, that has also been proceeding over the last 2 or 3 years, or most of that has been happening through that eelgrass resilience project. Now that that project is over, we'll probably come back to PrEP's technical advisory committee and get that going again. And then we have a sort of a special schedule for engaging with the MAM, because Brown and Caldwell have been such helpful collaborators. So that pretty much continues all the time. But then the broader public, that's what we have to get back to, using the technical advisory committee. And I'll stop there, Gretchen, in the interest of time.
Yeah, so I'll open that up. Clifton or Stacy, if either of you have anything you want to add to this portion, don't feel, there's Clifton.
Good afternoon. Yeah, I have nothing to add to that.
All right, great. So I will work with Kala just to get any nuances updated, but in general, the work that we've been discussing over the last several years and as outlined in the most recent adaptive management plan is essentially what we have been doing. It's ongoing. All right, that I'm going to move on to the next piece. Again, sorry, I'll open it up. Feel free to interrupt at any time, but if someone has any questions about that first piece, let me know. I can't see everyone, so if you're out there, you need something, make sure you speak up. All right, moving on. Methods to track reductions and additions of total nitrogen. So this is the work that we've been doing with PPAP. So I'm going to turn it over to Daniel. Are you going to be speaking, or Jamie? Either one of you? Yeah, any up?
Well, this is for the adaptive management plan.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things we will need to work with you to update is that we developed last year.
Yep.
With the help of Wordsmith and Rochester, we developed a method for calculating the rate reductions associated with sewering.
Yep.
And so that, I believe, we submitted to EPA. We didn't hear any comments, but we want to, I think, include a description of that methodology.
Yep.
The other thing I think we should add is we are trying to migrate.
Have
away-
you done that? The migration? I was gonna ask.
Yes, yeah, so that's what, so Daniel has reports. I don't know that we go over that right now. We can.
Yeah, we don't have to.
But we want to migrate away from the bat. The reason being is it's a little cumbersome, especially when we add things like the measured street sweeping, which we have authority from a letter from EPA to use the measured approach. In the MS4 permit, it doesn't look like that, and looks like they might update the modeling approach in the new draft permit that we're waiting for, but it doesn't look like it follows suit with mass. It doesn't look like they'll add the measured approach. So we want to continue to track it, I think, and demonstrate, the efficacy of those operations.
Yep.
And then has been a continual evolution of the actual credits. For instance, we have impervious cover disconnection now, which the original MS4 permit appendix F does not have. So we're hoping that
the BAT does not.
and the BAT does not have that. So these credits are evolving, and therefore we want to move to our calculator, which has those and integrates those updated credits. And
So
I think
are
that's what
we there?
we're there. We're definitely there. What we don't know about is what EPA's position is going to be. I would assume that they would want to adopt the latest and greatest science, especially things that they produced. But that, I mean, we made those comments reflective of the mass draft permit, that they should be incorporating, because in the mass draft permit, they didn't incorporate the latest, they just replicated the 2016 credits, even though, again, they're evolving and progressing. So that was our comment, that we should be using the most updated science that's out there.
Yep.
And so utilizing our new calculator will afford us the luxury of using the latest science. And, you know, I know that EPA is struggling with technical capacity, so I guess that's the other thing in my mind is, do they have the technical capacity to review this? Or, you know, our plea to them is, please utilize the research. I mean, they've been kind of relying on a lot of the University of New Hampshire data to progress these credits. So that was our plea, is allow us to utilize our calculator and kind of sanction that as a usable tool. Because again, the BAT, it was updated in 2020. The 2016 version was included in the MS4 permit. And, you know, so even there's been some inconsistency on the EPA side about what, you know, calculator or calculations they're pointing to. I think we can work with you to update the language here
Yes,
and clear that up.
yeah, and I think this is, I'm sure just me, and maybe too much for, but there's a difference. The BAT itself is like the tool, right?
That's the EPA tool.
Yeah.
Cool, and then the methods, when you're talking about the methods that were included, like the performance curves
Yeah.
and stuff like that, so they've already accepted all the performance curves.
Yeah.
And then the tool itself was clunky and had New Hampshire misspelled, so there's kind of two pieces.
Yeah, the performance curves are the first step.
Yeah.
And then the BAT and our tool both use the performance
Yes.
curves to actually calculate credits.
So are we still using the BAT tool?
No,
I didn't think so.
that's still where we're migrating away
Yeah.
from, because the BAT tool also, if you. It's unclear of what BAT tool they're referencing.
Yeah,
Did they
okay.
even reference
They
the
don't,
2020 in any? in
No, they
their
referenced the 2016 BAT.
Yeah, and then they didn't reference anything in the MS4 permit, so the RDA, the CII permit that came out, the draft for mass referenced the 2016 BAT. And then in the MS4 permit, I don't think they referenced any calculator, but they said it should be consistent with Appendix F. And so the way this has been going, there's all kinds of.
For their record, though, these guys are talking behind the scenes stuff right now. You guys like to share with everyone in the community. Putting your information in PTAP
Yeah,
is,
the beauty of PTAP is that the information you put into PTAP will never change.
yeah,
How we argue about the credits or how the credits
Yeah.
evolve based on the latest science is always going to be a work in progress. So.
Yeah.
The data that you're putting into PDAP can be utilized, the old credits, the new credits, and really, they don't land too far from each other.
Yeah. and you're processing, you're back behind the scenes processing,
Mhm.
which was great that you guys updated. But the average user isn't ever gonna
No.
even
Yeah,
know
this doesn't
anything about
affect the
that.
average user. And it all, you know, what ends up happening is the PTAP does the tracking of the information that's utilized in whatever tool is authorized to be used or whatever credits are authorized. And that will be a seamless transition.
Cool. I was gonna go to appendix, so in appendix. To C, I believe, of our report is where, so you see right here, we wrote, results from permit year 2 and 3 are included in, for all participating communities in appendix C. Next year, that will update this and it'll be 2 through 4, permit years 2 through 4. And they have this data was run on August 1st, or at some point it ended on August 1st. And
Yeah,
so
so-
Daniel was able to provide this today.
And this is a draft, like, so, you know, we probably need to update the years, right, and
Yeah.
make the years consistent.
Yeah, so if you have any comments or concerns like, hey, I expected a lot more. This is a good time to add comments before we finalize it. But yeah, this is up to date from the full PTAP database using our tool.
And I apologize to those who are remote. I don't have a digital copy, but we can, yeah, Daniel can provide that. I think it's great. I think, and it shows Portsmouth has taken the lead this year. And I think it's really interesting how it does. And I'm curious what Portsmouth, whether it was inputting more data, which is, I'm guessing what it was. Past BMPs. Jamie, I don't know if you're there. Can you share what-
It's, I mean, we put all of our private development in there, so that's
Yeah.
a huge number.
And that was done through, and when you did that, did you complete an inspection? Of those BMPs, or, you just did that from your own records?
No, we have the applicant fill out PTAP. We review it for its completeness, and then when the project as-builts come in, then we review it again, and then we move it to accept it and implement it.
And so that's associated with the new developments?
All new developments. Yeah, we have not gone, we've got a few from the past in there, but no, we didn't really input a lot of old ones. That's just what got built in the last year.
And I would just
Or
say,
no, let me rephrase it. That's what we received as built for in the last year. The big difference.
and I'll just to follow up with that, we do have other staff that actually does go out in the field during the construction process.
Oh, yes.
To see, yes, is this what we expect to see in the ground?
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
very thoroughly reviewed and
And that's one of the areas that I think was a blind spot in the new draft MS4 permit for Massachusetts. They referenced the ability for a municipality to include private BMPs or SCMs into the load calculation.
Right.
So all those existing private control measures could be added, which we never really thought about before.
That would be great, because if they're maintaining them,
Yes.
and
Yes.
I know Portsmouth long ago, frankly, we were pretty early in the adoption of tighter restrictions. Relative to how you address your stormwater on your property, so. That's certainly, that's good to know, because I hadn't realized that language was in the MS4, that's really good to know.
Yeah, in the new draft.
And Rochester did a couple of years ago go through and put, and not everyone, but many of the private ones. To take advantage of it, which was a big
That
jump.
was a big jump.
The only thing I would add, and this is something that's been kind of on the table for a while to address, because we know it's coming, and I'd rather address it internally before EPA demand something from it, is how to track the load changes. So the land use change and the
Yes.
load associated with land use change over time.
That's the next
Yeah.
piece.
And
So,
so we do have data that we've consolidated from, 2016 and 2019 years. Based on the national land use land cover data set. And what we'd like to do is commission some kind of like a subcommittee of man to look into it. And the idea would be to propose a method moving forward where we can advocate more what we want to see. Just to give you a point of reference, like in the Charles River permit, they require them to update the changes in land use annually,
yeah,
which is crazy.
Yeah.
We have the benefits that our permit doesn't have anything in it around, we don't have a TMDL, we don't have a load target, we don't have a reduction target. It just talks about trends. So I think it's a great opportunity to advocate what we want to see, because I don't think the data doesn't change that quickly. And when you ask for annual, then you're getting into all these kind of assumptions associated with annual loading, right? Because the land use data layers don't change annually. They might change every 3 years to 5 years.
Right.
And so that's what we want to advocate for. We don't want you to have to spin up a number annually, which is going to be wrong, and everybody's going
Right.
to do it differently. We want to do it regionally as the GIS layers advance.
That's right. That's right. So PTAP itself is tracking pretty granularly, but really only useful at a take a step back and put it in context. That's the only way that it's useful.
Yeah,
And so rather than it's okay to continue to track the reductions at that granular level, but looking at a broader way of looking at land use changes is going to be
Yeah.
helpful
because
to
let's-
contextualize it.
you know, if you really look at it, every community is gonna have different thresholds in which they require stormwater management. So, you know, at the extreme would be 1 acre is de minimis according to EPA, and some
Yeah.
communities probably still have that.
Correct.
Especially if they don't have updated regulations, then they default to the, you know,
Yes.
the construction general permit. Other communities have 10,000 square feet. And so it's really hard to stitch that type of diversity of data together.
Yeah.
And so using the updated land use layers, so PrEP has been really active and supportive of continually developing an impervious cover land use data layer. I think 2022 is the last we have. And then we have other methods too, like the NLCD that we can access. So a subcommittee would be great, so we can kind of work that through. I would nominate Jamie McCarty.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, someone with some in-depth understanding of the GIS layers.
Sure.
So we can update this paragraph
with-
as
with
needed,
a
but
General
it's-
language about moving forward, and then, yeah, I think the sooner we start to roll up our sleeves and look into it, the better. Because I think we want to be able to inform EPA about the methodology that is most pragmatic for us.
Okay.
As opposed to the other way around.
All right,
That's what.
that sounds good. All right, so same process or same sort of ideas outlined as before, but we will talk about actually getting a subcommittee going.
Yeah, so I think in the interim, what we'll do is we'll take a first crack of combing through the language.
Yeah.
And updating it, and then send it to you.
sounds great. Thank you. Okay. Any questions on PTAP tracking, and accounting, long-term tracking and accounting? Okay, I'm gonna move on then. All right, overall source reductions. So this is the part that each community really needs to step up and do their piece. So it just talks about the projects that you have on the books. Not necessarily on the books, sorry, a plan or an idea or an initiative to do that is going to result in some nutrient reductions or other sort of pollutant reductions. So I'm gonna skip down. I just want to show what Rochester does, just for a point of reference. Everyone does it differently. We've talked to EPA and they understand why everyone does it differently. And this should not, we don't want this to be, because the proof is in the pudding, which is in the PTAP. But laying out your plan is just a way to sort of show the stakeholders that there are plans to do nutrient reducing activities. So I'm gonna go to Rochester's as an example, just because that's the community that where I'm from. So let's see. Here we go, Rochester. So what we do, and everyone does it a little bit differently, like I said, but what we've done is sort of outline what project. So for example, this is from last year, but Colonial Pines Sewer Extension. EPA doesn't know what Colonial Pines Sewer Extension means, but I know what that means. The city knows what that means. We're putting, close to $4 million worth of a sewer extension project. So you're just sort of outline this information, and it just kind of shows a project that you have planned, and we've since completed this work. That is going to result in some nutrient reductions. You just kind of keep going down. These are projects that are underway. Some of them are like Wakefield Street. Again, it doesn't matter that EPA doesn't know what that project is, but we know what it is. It is, does have some nutrient potential, and I'm just outlining that, you know, it's pending some CIP financing. So keep going down all the different types of projects that we have going. It doesn't get into too nitty gritty, but it does have sort of the larger ones that we're doing. And you can see Gonic Dam removal, for example, that we don't really have any nutrient reduction associated with that, but we know that there is nutrient reduction associated with it. So it's just sort of information out there that is going, this dam is going to be removed. There's actually 2 dams that is going to result in some benefits. We can talk about whether they're worth tracking in PTAP or if it's just something out there, but it still gives sort of stakeholders that are looking at this an understanding of what Rochester's committed to doing or what has plans to do. You know, keep going down, you can get into some non-structural work. So of course, ongoing MS4 compliance, street sweeping, above and beyond what is in MS4 compliance. All these different types of programs that we're doing, fertilizer programs. You're doing, yeah, you can just look through all of this, but just different types of projects that we have going. And then pilot projects, we just talked about the stakeholder committee has a pilot project that we're still waiting to learn what is selected there. Other than that, we don't have any pilot projects. We actually do at our wastewater treatment plant that I might include this year. But so I just wanted to share that. I will send each individual community a reminder and what you submitted last year. Some of them, like Newington, which is smaller, just sort of has a general statement. I know Newington has some large redevelopment projects I read about in the newspaper. I don't know specifically from the planning department that they may wish to talk about. And those would certainly have some nutrient reductions at like the mall and some of that area. So anyway, each individual community is going to need to do that. And send it to me for inclusion. And that's the piece that needs to be sent out 2 weeks before our voting to submit the adaptive management plan. So I'm hoping to get everything really by September 1, and then us have our meeting. We can talk about it at the end of the thing, but a mid-September meeting so that we can get this submitted. So please be thinking about updating your plans. Any questions from the communities?
Gretchen, I have a comment to add to that.
Yep.
The expected nutrient load. Right now, you have a lot of TBDs.
Yes.
The PTAP report that each community will be getting will have every individual entry from PTAP
Mhm.
and have the load.
Excellent.
So you can cross-reference those and add in
Yeah.
every load.
Yeah. So and those will be a lot of times, part of the reason why those are TBDs is when we first envisioned this 5 years ago, I felt like, I think that the thought was that it was more important to really calculate what your proposed load reduction was going to be. And then the sort of thought has been like, no, PTAP, once it's done, it goes in PTAPs and it's calculated. Doesn't really matter what you think it's going to be. It
Yeah.
sort of matters, but until it's done, it doesn't really matter. And then once, for at least for me, but other communities can do it differently. But for Rochester, once it's in PTAP and it's done, it's no longer on that list. But this is loose and just sort of showing commitment and, you know, forethought on projects. So,
And I think that's something that Danielle Cato indicated. that
Yes,
was
yep.
acceptable.
yeah, Mel and Danielle had weighed in on that a couple of years ago. Any questions? Okay. Then we will continue down our process for comprehensively evaluating significant scientific and methodological issues. This is probably the most complicated and piece. The one that I'll draw your attention to, and then I'm going to turn it over to our consultants, is a lot of this information that we've been pulling together is ultimately culminating in a report to be completed prior to the expiration of the permit, which is February. And we will work with NHDES for review and comment prior to submission. So I'll turn this over to Stacy or Clifton, who want to give an update on kind of where we are with working on that plan.
Oh, well, I will take this one, Gretchen. So this is Clifton Bell.
Yep.
Good afternoon, everyone. Gretchen's been talking about the drivers of this report actually go back to the general permit itself, part 3.1.d, which make reference to the process, which is part of the reason for the adaptive management plan is to include an inclusive and transparent process for evaluating some of the questions that have been around with us for a while, including the choice of load-based or concentration-based thresholds to manage the system. And the permit says that will result in the culmination of a report at the end of the permit term, and that it should indicate whether DES concurs with the findings. So that's directly from the permit. And the end of the permit term, well, the permit was active on February 1st, 2001. So we're looking at the end of January. And the adaptive management plan itself has a little more detail as to what MAM has committed to putting into that report in terms of evaluating things like, what's the latest state of the science on stressors on eelgrass, the role of nitrogen, the role of other stressors, and pointing forward to the future in terms of the refinement of technical tools or completing a TMDL or a TMDL alternative, such as some sort of alternate restoration plan. So that's what this report will address. And the report does not exist. I can tell you a little bit about the outline. It'll have an introduction that talks about goals and drivers. It'll have a section. We did think this would be a good opportunity to summarize, not just on an annual basis, but for the permit term itself, MAM's activities and accomplishments, including pollutant reduction, support of research and monitoring, coordination and collaboration. The third section we expect to be interpretations of eelgrass stressor response relations. And so that'll have a discussion of some individual stressors and a conceptual model. We're certainly not operating in a vacuum on that. That will be building on a lot of the work that's been done, a lot of the collaborative work, the Eelgrass Resiliency Project, the biooptical modeling that's been done, more recent analyses, and may have a few additional independent analyses. Section 4 is probably going to concentrate on the nitrogen load and concentration thresholds. One of the calculations that we do plan on updating is the loading rates, the annual loading rates to the estuarine areas. A la Latimer and Rigo, the numbers that you'll see a lot of discussion of in the permit fact sheet. So we'd like to update those numbers and maybe refine them spatially a little bit and see if that provides any insights, as well as talk about pros and cons of concentration-based thresholds from what we've learned. And then the final section of the report, it will be our, the recommended path forward. This will include discussion on monitoring and analysis, addressing data gaps, technical monitoring tools, of course, continued implementation, and and thoughts on planning. So this is not going to be a TMDL or a TMDL-like report or a TMDL alternative report itself, but it might point towards how that might be accomplished in the future, what that might look like. So, as I said, it's due by the permit by the end of January, but there will be drafts ahead of that and communications ahead of that. For example, with DES, with CREP, to give a heads up of what's coming and a look. And of course, we have to, by permit, have to indicate in the report DES's concurrence. That requires a DES review of a draft so that we can indicate level of concurrence in the report. That's all I have on the report, but happy to take any questions on that if there are any.
Any questions? I think Steve. Hey, Steve.
Hey, hello. Clifton, thanks for the overview. I was just wondering, who are you going to be sending the draft to for the DES concurrence?
So I don't have that list yet. I do need to,
He's leaning on me to coordinate some of that, and it'll be you are the primary contact. Ted,
Okay.
because Ted was so involved in
Yep.
a lot of the work, I think that he'd still keep in the loop, but I think that's totally up to you guys how you allocate, but you are the primary contact for this.
Yeah, perfect. No, and Ted and my guest Ken will also probably be involved. So
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. Any other questions? Okay, so the adaptive management plan, I'm gonna go back to Clifton, did you have anything else you wanted to share?
I had nothing else.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I'm gonna go back to sharing the adaptive management plan that we were talking through. So that, what Clifton was just outlining, essentially, it's not gonna change too much of the adaptive management plan annual update. Because the plan, the report that he's talking about is still very, very much in skeletal form, I think. But these are the things that, it's the same stuff that we've been saying, the same information that they're gonna be drawing on. Talk about some of the work with the external panel, pollutant reduction progress modeling framework. So all of this stuff, there are not going to be any substantial changes in this year's adaptive management report. Any questions on that piece? Okay, then I'm going to move on to the last piece, which is the timeline for completion of TMDL. And again, as we say, really the committee or the MAM really would never be doing the TMDL. So it would come from DES, but I don't foresee there really being any change to what we've laid out as this sort of proposed completion timeline, which is getting through first permit term, doing all of this monitoring studies, doing a lot of sort of outreach, developing a report, and then getting into the second permit term, which is really starting to look at a TMDL versus alternatives, and start kind of working towards the development of what that final EPA permit might look like. But still a fair amount of unknowns here in the second permit term. So I don't think that there would be much difference here.
Gretchen, can I jump in?
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't know if this, you may want to correct, and Clifton and
Yeah.
Stacy may feel differently. But mostly this feels sort of on target, except for the fact that the restoration planning approach and the reaching consensus on restoration planning approach are supposed to have happened in 2025, and we certainly are running a little bit behind that.
I would agree.
So I think that just needs to be
Yep.
accounted for, so everybody realizes we're keeping an eye on this and being honest about it.
Yes,
Still evolving. Still evolving.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we're about a year behind, I don't know, could be,
Yeah.
we could, but it definitely needs to be reflected, because otherwise people are
It's a
gonna
good catch.
Yep.
feel that we're not.
Good point. Good
Yep.
point, Carla.
Thank you.
Was there been any talk or speculation about what's gonna happen in 2026?
no, I mean, I haven't heard, so a lot of people ask me this, I haven't heard anything. There may be, people may have had side conversations, but as the chair, I have not heard anything. And in talking to the main communities, you want speculation, all I can do is read tea leaves and say the main communities were just given a permit that looks identical to what we're doing and encouraged to do what we're doing. So
So we can assume that it's gonna be administrative.
I cannot say that I assume it's gonna be administratively continued. I don't know.
So let me just
Sure.
suggest that, you know, the general permit, the nitrogen permit has the standard EPA language that allows for administrative, you know, holdover and continuance until such time as another permit is issued. And I think, what will be helpful to all parties is as the MAM group begins to put together this report that Clifton is working hard on that drafting to kind of gather what we've been learning and kind of set out a potential roadmap for next steps. I think that's going to help inform how EPA might want to approach the end of the permit term. But and I think it'll be helpful to get their feedback, but it may be in part, that's why we haven't heard much definitive, and of course, they've got their own changes and pieces that they're trying to factor in and priorities. So I think what's important to do is for us to continue as we're doing, which is, we seem to be headed in the right direction. We've learned a lot. We're continuing to grow what we know, to figure out how to deploy our dollars wisely and get that to DES first, see where they are, obviously get it to our stakeholders, you know, CLF, luckily, you know, Melissa Paley is very involved, has been to all these meetings and works a lot with prep and the other technical pieces, so, you know, I think if there is consensus that, hey, we should continue on the path that we've begun to outline, I'd love to see the more technical updates on the EPA side of the house that might help the communities be more effective in reporting its data and understanding, you know, what we're doing and whether it's working. I think that would be good. So I think we should carry on. And I think we'll probably know more as we begin to continue to share this and make those outreaches. So.
Do we have somebody from EPA on today?
I think I saw
We-
Danielle.
I know she was here for the last meeting, at least part of the last meeting.
Yeah.
If you go to participants, I might show you the list. I did not see her on.
Yeah, maybe she's not on.
But I know she was here for the last meeting.
Sorry, who?
Danielle Gato.
No, yeah,
No, I don't see her here.
and I haven't seen her pop on at all either, so.
I think maybe for the September meeting, we may have more to share.
I will state something that is maybe obvious to everyone, but no one's saying it, which is that EPA is not the EPA of last year. So we just have to understand that. We who live in this community have to understand that EPA is a very wounded agency right now. If you talk to anybody in that agency, there's been a lot of changes from the federal administration that they are dealing with. So it's difficult for them right now. Maybe they'll get into a place at some point in the future where they're more streamlined because of the changes. But right now, EPA, you see it, those of us who have to work with EPA, what you find is that the phone doesn't get picked up as often, the emails don't get returned because there's a lot of changes happening that again are coming from the federal side. So we as a community have to decide if we want to, how we want to react to that reality. And it's not for prep to decide, but I just want to state that for the record that if we wait on EPA, that's going to be a different waiting time than it has been in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I guess speaking in that context or in that sort of, you know, reality you just outlined. Yeah, I have not heard anything specific. I have not heard don't do anything, and I've seen, granted, they were state permits from Maine, but they were supported by the federal, and they've been issued, you know, since some of the recent changes at EPA. So that's the best, right, that's the best I can see. So I think Rochester's plan is to continue with the same level of commitment to this adaptive management approach, continue with this, I don't think there's any radical changes one way or the other going into the next permit term until we hear anything.
Do we know if New Hampshire's taken any steps to issue their own permits?
To take on primacy or whatever.
Right.
Does, I don't think so. There has been, this has been a topic over the years several times. I think the amount of funding you would have to increase, I mean, Steve Kutcher is welcome to speak to this if he wants to, but as I understand, the amount of added personnel that you would need to take that on and some other things, there was really never an appetite to pursue that at a real level.
Mhm.
But things can change, but I haven't heard anything.
Given, this is Steve, given the state budget process we just went through, yeah, it's definitely not being considered at this time.
Yeah. Okay. Then I'm gonna stop sharing this. Thank you all for sitting through that. I hopefully that was helpful at some level. Like I said, individual communities, please update your individual Appendix B and get them to me as quickly as you can so that we can include. I'll reach out to the specific state project partners that spoke today to make those updates that we talked about. We will include PTAP in those revisions. And I'm hoping really by September 1 to have everything out in draft for review.
In advance, thank you, Gretchen, for coordinating
Yeah.
all those pieces, so you can do one filing will be a little more efficient,
Yeah, you bet.
sharing our information.
Okay, then moving on to item number 5 is actually the submission of the scientific summary report. We already discussed that as part of the review of the adaptive management plan. So I'm going to move on to item number 6, stakeholder comment. And I believe Melissa Paley, you're here, if you would like to share anything.
I am here, thank you. A very interesting conversation with so much uncertainty. It will certainly be an interesting year ahead. But the only thing I'd like to say is just that I thought the meeting last week of the executive committee, to which you had invited the 4 main communities, was really quite remarkable. Maybe it seemed rather, I don't know, no one had a big marching parade leading up to it, but it felt like a very pivotal moment to me, where the MAM communities, having worked together to build this this adaptive management framework, welcomed 4 communities from another state at the urging of that state agency to join this collaboration. And it felt like a real leaning into the idea of by state innovative watershed management based or watershed thinking about how to improve the health of the Great Bay Estuary. So it felt notably like a real point in time in how thinking has evolved about how to do this work. So I want to thank Gretchen and Suzanne and others from the executive committee for really welcoming these main communities into this process.
Well, thank you for saying that. I agree. It's really exciting. It's taken a lot of work, but it does take times like that to step back and look at all of the work that we've been able to accomplish. I agree. Thank you. Anyone else? No, all right, then I'm gonna move on to public comment. Anyone from the public you wish to speak? All right, then we'll talk about scheduling our next meeting. The agenda items. It will be review and approve the adaptive management plan. Potentially, updates and maybe approval of a revised intermunicipal agreement. I'm not anticipating anything else to be on that agenda unless folks have anything they want to add.
I think that's enough.
Yeah, it's just that. So timing, let's see. These Thursday 1 o'clock meetings work for me, if they're working for other people.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
I think Christie wanted to.
Oh,
speak.
hey, Christy, I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm sorry. I was having trouble getting my camera turned on and everything. So I know I missed the public comment.
Oh, no,
piece.
please.
But for those of you that I don't know, I am helping the Berwick Sewer District and the South Berwick Sewer District with their adaptive management framework proposals to meet their final sewer district permits. And so I attended the meeting last week also, and I just wanted to echo Melissa's comments about how informative that meeting was and how well organized this group is. And both the district personnel reached out to me, you know, after the fact to say, you know, go ahead and let our regulator know that we are going to be joining NAM, and you guys will be hearing from them soon. And so we were all very appreciative of all the information and all the hard work that you guys have been doing for 5 years now. So thank you.
Thanks, Christy.
And we look forward to working with you.
Great. All right, back to scheduling. Unfortunately, the 18th seems to make the most sense, but I am not able to make it on the 18th. So
25th.
let's see, the
24th.
25th. I can definitely, let's see.
Or the last week is of September is pretty good for me. That
The
would give us enough time to push out the 2 week in advance.
The 25th, we have a mutual aid. So Wednesday, the 24th works well for me. Would that work for folks? We did 1 o'clock on the 24th. Any issues with that?
I'm sorry, is that the 24th?
Yep. Wednesday, the 24th.
PrEP is having its EPA evaluation.
Oh, is that day? Well, yeah, sorry.
And I think you're part
Yeah,
of it, and Steve
no.
Kuchar's part of it.
We'll
so
do,
I'm a little
yeah,
hesitant about that.
yeah.
23rd.
I could do the 23rd.
That is a Jewish holiday. I
I'm
will
glad
miss it.
that you know that.
I will
Okay.
miss it, but I don't know if there are other Jewish folks who would also miss it. So
You can do. If we go,
Second.
sorry about that.
no, don't be, I'm glad this is why we're doing this.
Yep.
Well, I can do the 22nd as well. Monday, the 22nd, does that work for folks? All right, Monday, the 22nd. It appears this Rochester meeting place is working for folks. Is that good? Yeah.
I don't mind traveling. Jamie comes in remotely, so.
I'm always open to moving if people want to, but this works for us. And we'll do 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Okay. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.